Imagine a city gripped by terror. Not from a war, not from a natural disaster, but from a killer so cunning, so methodical, so utterly without mercy, that even the greatest lawman in American history couldn't catch him. This is Cleveland, Ohio. The 1930s. And somewhere in the shadows of this industrial city, a monster is hunting. Cleveland in the 1930s was a city of contradictions. On one hand, it was a booming metropolis, the sixth largest city in the United States, full of steel mills, jazz clubs, and working-class ambition. On the other hand, like most of America, it was bleeding from the wounds of the Great Depression. Unemployment was rampant. Thousands of people lived in shanty towns along the banks of Kingsbury Run, a bleak, winding ravine that cut through the east side of the city. It was in Kingsbury Run that the nightmare began. In September of 1934, a woman walking along the shore of Lake Erie discovered something horrifying: a lower torso washed up on the beach. The remains were female, but no head, no arms, no legs were ever found. She was never identified. Investigators called her Lady of the Lake, and the case went cold almost immediately. But the city barely had time to catch its breath. In September of 1935, two young boys playing in Kingsbury Run made a gruesome discovery: two headless, emasculated male bodies lying in the grass. The bodies had been drained of blood. The cuts were clean, precise, almost surgical. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Over the next 3 years, the body count climbed. 12 confirmed victims. Some investigators believe there were more. The killer targeted the vulnerable, drifters, the homeless, sex workers, people who lived on the fringes of society. People who wouldn't immediately be missed. The victims were dismembered with extraordinary skill. Heads were removed. Limbs were severed at the joints. In some cases, the bodies had been chemically treated, suggesting the killer had knowledge of chemistry or medicine. Most victims were never identified. They were given nicknames by the press: Victim Number 4, the Tattooed Man, the One-Armed Man. They were human beings reduced to puzzles, and the killer wanted it that way. By 1936, the city of Cleveland was in a full-scale panic. The newspapers were running front-page stories almost weekly. Citizens were demanding answers. And so the city turned to the one man who seemed untouchable: Eliot Ness. Yes, that Eliot Ness. The man who took down Al Capone. The man who built the untouchables. He had just been appointed safety director of Cleveland, and now the torso murders landed squarely on his desk. Ness threw everything he had at the case. He organized task forces. He interviewed hundreds of suspects. He had the Kingsbury Run shantytowns burned to the ground in an attempt to cut off the killer's hunting ground, a move that was as controversial as it was desperate. But the killer vanished. There was one man investigators kept circling back to. A man named Francis Sweeney, a doctor. A veteran. A man with medical training precise enough to explain the surgical dismemberments. Ness himself had Sweeney brought in for questioning and reportedly subjected him to a polygraph test, which Sweeney failed. Twice. But here's the infuriating twist: Francis Sweeney was the cousin of a powerful U.S. congressman. Prosecuting him would be a political minefield. There wasn't enough hard evidence for a conviction. And so, Sweeney walked free. He later voluntarily committed himself to a mental institution, where, chillingly, he reportedly sent Eliot Ness taunting postcards for years.